Hello everyone. Welcome. It is Thursday, April 14th, 2022. I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia on a beautifully cool day. I believe the high is supposed to be 73. Don't feel any humidity, and it is mostly cloudy, a light breeze. Just a wonderful spring day here in Atlanta. Things are getting greener. When we left to go to Texas and came back, I noticed there's a lot more things that were green here in Atlanta. And of course, when I went to Texas, all these bluebonnets, which is like what Texas is known for in the spring. Lots of them are planted like on the highways, interstates and so forth, like in the middle, the median of the roads and on the sides. So you can see all these little pretty blue bonnets that are growing up. So anyway, enjoyed the time in Texas, enjoying a couple weeks back here in Atlanta, going back to Texas. We'll be in Merkel, Texas, and visit probably Dallas and Waco again. Again, that's April 30th at Fountain Gate Merkel Church. We will be there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon doing a deliverance training where we'll be speaking about, oftentimes various testimonies from people, real life stories of people who have gone through inner healing and deliverance, and then explain how I take people through sessions, how you can do the same thing. It's just a matter of understanding. The truth is what sets us free if we're willing to admit it, if we're willing to humble ourselves before the Lord. So the next Worldwide Deliverance is coming up on the 24th of April, Sunday night. And then April the 30th will be in Merkel, Texas, and then May the 1st will be speaking Sunday morning at Fountain Gate Merkel Church, doing the corporate inner healing and deliverance, and then we'll be doing a prophetic night. I love prophesying over people, and I'll prophesy over everybody that comes to Fountain Gate Church. Last time I was there for, I think it was an hour and 40 minutes worth before I got everyone done. And so excited seeing what Lord is doing. We see a lot of great fruit. That's why I do what I do. I actually did a session this morning for a guy from South Africa, and he at the end of the session was very happy, very joyful, lighter, felt so much lighter, so much more peace. Things that happened when he was 2 years old, 3 years old, 5 years old, that largely affected him. And when the Lord comes to heal and you get those demons kicked out, then you feel much lighter. And he made the comment, "You really enjoy doing this?" And I'm like, "I do." I said, "It's way better than selling software to banks. Way better." So hello to Franklin Dale Thomas, Captain O'Captain from Illinois. Hello to Tina Kirkpatrick on Facebook. Hello to, there was somebody else on Facebook I couldn't see there. And hello to the folks on YouTube. And I will continue to schedule more. It's the Lord is connecting my wife and I to various ministries all over the country, and it's interesting. I got connected to a ministry from San Diego that has a direct tie back to Waco, Texas. So it's like the Lord is preparing a lot of things deliverance-wise in Waco, Texas. So it's amazing, when the Lord has a plan and he starts to connect people in ministry. It just happens. You don't have to make things happen. So hello to Tracy Campbell on Facebook. So the topic of the day is how much of your life is a false narrative? And what I mean by that is how much of what you say to people is not the truth. And it was yesterday the Lord spoke to me, and he said, "Nelson," he said, "as people get their soul wounds healed and delivered, they don't do the behaviors that they have to lie about or cover up or come up with a false narrative later." Hello to Justin Chavaz from Dallas, Texas. I saw Justin in Dallas when we were there. Hello. So as people get healed and delivered, the false narrative becomes a true narrative in their life. There's a lot of us, all of us have been hurt and wounded. All of us have done things that we're not proud of, and then we end up lying about it, acting like we're a victim. That's just a natural way of how people behave. and I've seen it firsthand. Seen it in my own life, seen it in others' lives. And when you see people pursuing to be honest with their own wounds and getting them healed, instead of having to make things up to make themselves, oftentimes they portray themselves as a victim. They continue to stay in that victim mode. Please feel sorry for me, please give me money, I can't do this because of this, and they have all these excuses that are not the truth. If they would just put all their effort in trying to cover up and make up this false narrative, and put that effort into getting their wounds healed from their past, being honest, getting humble before the Lord, repenting of their sins before the Lord, getting delivered, then they wouldn't have to live in a false narrative. So there's a lot of people, that we know that are in church that would call themselves whatever, a pastor, a evangelist, and all these things, and yet they do things that are not what the Lord would want them to do, and then they have to cover it up with a false narrative that they try to sell to people. And so the Lord knows the truth, but as people are humbling themselves, willing to look in the mirror at themselves, and doing the work that it takes to be honest, then they can get healed, then they can get delivered, they can forgive the people that hurt them. Then that spectrum of their false narrative changes to a true narrative. Then all the things that they say and they do every day, if they say to a person, whatever, they're saying the truth. They don't need to lie. They can be honest. There can be some things that a person does still that they are not real proud of. But there's a lot of people that I've taken through sessions, and they're just like, oh my gosh, my life's completely changed. Within, obviously it's a process. So sometimes it's months later. Typically, if you go through a session, then oftentimes you see a lot of that stuff get broken off, and then you have to walk it out. So it doesn't mean that everything that the enemy has had in common with you might be taken away, but the majority, a lot of it is. And so you can actually hear the Lord a lot clearer. You end up pursuing to do things of the Spirit and not of the flesh. And of course, Galatians 5:16 through 26 talks about all these things that are the fruit of the flesh, sexual things, impurity. So if you're looking at porn, if you're masturbating, if you're having sex outside of marriage, if you are lusting after people, if you are getting mad and angry at people, taking an offense, gossiping, being jealous, envious, all these things that are fruit of the flesh, it says you're not going to inherit the kingdom of God. So it is a salvation issue. It's really how the Lord, looks at it, is he's got to see some flesh, or got to see some spirit. He's got to see some fruit, basically, that's of the Spirit, not of the flesh. So there's a lot of people that still struggle. And if they continue to live a lie, they have to cover up for all their things, all their behaviors that they do that are ungodly. If they are, and you see a lot of this, is the things that the people that struggle with, that they do, they have such a pride level that what they'll do is they'll project to other people and say that they were bad to them in the same areas that they themselves were actually doing the evilness, the fleshly behavior too. So they'll accuse others of what they're doing, basically. And they want to act like they're a victim. They want to stay in the victim mode. Again, we're all victims when we grow up. When we get our wounds healed, we're able to forgive the people for doing what they've done to us. Then we no longer live a life of victimhood. And there's a lot of people that stay in that victim mode, and they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, forever. And then oftentimes there are people that, they'll flat out lie. They'll come on social media, they'll post things, and trying to portray a false narrative of themselves so people will feel sorry for them. And they love to be a victim. Poor, poor, pitiful me. Oftentimes it starts at birth. If they've had struggles in the birth process, then oftentimes they'll play on that. Well, gee, I'm just a little innocent thing. I shouldn't even be alive. And they stay stuck in their past. And they want all the people to feel sorry for them. And those people aren't going to grow spiritually. And it's scary when they actually desire to get into ministry and doing ministry for people, because then they'll hurt people. They're like the Pharisees and the scribes who were not healed and delivered. They were very prideful, very arrogant. And they wanted people to feel, like they knew everything. And so you have to be cognizant, I guess, of where you are at in your walk. How healed and delivered are you? How much do you have to cover up and lie? Oftentimes these people that have not been healed and delivered, they will lie and they will convince themselves of the lies being the truth. They will convince themselves of that. And then what will happen is they will oftentimes have to keep lying to protect their past lies. And that becomes very challenging. When people start to see through that, then what will happen is they will normally attack them and come against them and try and get other people to gang up against them and lie about them. And normally those people that would support them also have the similar wounds, similar demonic stuff in their lives, that they're pulling into that. Their demons are like demons. Like say Jezebel and Jezebel like each other. They will support each other. They will protect each other. And that's how it works. But as you pursue getting your wounds healed, pursue getting delivered, then the negative behaviors, the bad behaviors that you used to do, you no longer do. And then you can say, I'm changed. I feel so good. I feel clean. I feel pure. It's a wonderful life then at that point. And then the Lord, you're aligning yourself basically as you're going through the healing and deliverance process, you're aligning your life more with what the Word says, what the Bible says, how Christ behaved. And then He will be able to bless you. He will be able to pour out favor upon you. You won't have to ask for money and beg for money and try to play on the heartstrings of people under a false narrative. You won't have to do any of that. The Lord will bring to you finances. The Lord will bless you if you're called to do ministry. There's a lot of people that are doing ministry that unfortunately are not healed and not delivered, and they're hurting people, hurting other people. And it's my I guess my experience, what I've seen is the best people that do ministry are those who have gone through that wound healing and deliverance process. They're really godly people. If they make a mistake, they can admit to it. There's some leaves that are falling. If they make a mistake, they can admit to it. They can say, yep, made a mistake. Whereas those that are not healed and delivered, they will lie and they will blame other people for all of their own issues. Oftentimes they'll have these relationships that they'll draw into, and then they will trigger and they will go off on people that will break the relationship. And instead of them admitting the truth, saying, oh my goodness, oh my gosh, it's my fault, got to take responsibility for that, they will blame the other party who couldn't tolerate the constant negative behavior, the manifestations of those demonic spirits. So ultimately you see a lot of that going on. It's like even yesterday I had a conversation with a lady, my wife and I did, and she's like, yep, my ex-spouse was not a very good person, very Jezebelic and so forth, but she also admitted that I also did some things. And I understand that, when a person has a Jezebel spirit, they will provoke and provoke and provoke and provoke their spouse until that spouse finally says enough is enough. I'm not going to tolerate this anymore. And then they feel like they're a victim, and then they want to spread lies and rumors against, and that's how it works. You typically have one person in the relationship that tends to be more Jezebelic, and they're the ones that will trigger and go off and will self-sabotage their relationship. And then there's those who struggle with the Ahab spirit that oftentimes put up with it, tolerate it, and then eventually they have to say enough is enough. Can't tolerate this anymore. And it is interesting, 85% of marriages tend to be Jezebel and Ahab, and those that are Jezebel want to act like they're a victim, feel sorry for me, let me treat you horribly, and demanding everything of you, and yet own nothing of their own behavior. So they have to come up with a false narrative. They end up coming up with, all these different things. I remember one lady who said that she had been abused by her husband, and the husband was very sweet man, was the truth, but her false narrative was that, oh, he abused me. He abused me so much, and at first she started out the narrative by saying she had lost a child, lost a baby because of the abuse, which was completely false. And the demons in her were like, you know what? if losing one child through abuse makes some people sympathize with me, if I up the ante and make it 2, oh, I lost 2 children because of the abuse, then even more people will feel sorry for me. And so she did that, and she continued to increase it. The last I'd heard a couple years ago, it was up to 17. 17. I lost 17 babies because, and the truth of the situation was this man actually got all full custody of their 4 children. She could not even be allowed to know where they were. She couldn't have any contact with them. That's how bad that the person was against her own children. So, and that's pretty bad. But people that are wounded and not healed and delivered, they'll come up with a false narrative that they can sell to the general public to get them to feel sorry for them. So if you hear a person saying, you know, oh, poor, poor, pitiful me, you know, and they're whatever, in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, don't take everything that they say at face value. Bring it before the Lord. Ask the Lord, show me, is this the truth? Or is this a false narrative? Because many times they'll be painting a picture that's a false narrative. You know, not every time. You know, obviously, the truth is really in most relationships, you'll tend to have one that's more Jezebelic. That's more controlling, more malicious, more demanding, more sexually impure, more ungodly. And they're the ones that will do the abuse of the spouse, and then they will want to cover it up and sell their lies, sell their false narrative. And then it's up to the individual people to discern who's telling the truth. And it's no fun, obviously, when you have relationships like that, because I deal with couples all the time. And I always tell them in our sessions is to look at yourself in the mirror. And mainly of those that struggle more with the Jezebel spirit, because they're the ones that come up with a false narrative and try to sell that to the counselor. And they want to have people feel sorry for them, get their sympathy, and so forth. So understand, you know, we're all going to be hurt, we're all going to be wounded, and if you continue to stay as a victim, and you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, if you're having like an initial conversation with somebody, and within the first hour of the conversation, they start to bring up all these poor, poor, pitiful me, I've gone through all these horrible things, then you know that they're not healed and they're not delivered yet, which will then contribute to that false narrative if you continue to have that relationship. And those who are healed, you know, they tend to not want to talk a lot about the bad stuff that they went through. Now again, as a testimony, they can share that, yeah, I've overcome this. They can write books about what they've overcome. But doing ministry, you know, if you're continually hurt and wounded, then you probably need to do minimal until you get more healed. And as you get more healed, then you can use the things that you have gone through and overcome. But you have better of overcome, which means I no longer am trying to blame all of the things on other people. I will own my own things, and I can share the truth, but I'll be honest. I will not have to have a false narrative. You see it in politics, where people that have done very evil things will sell a false narrative to the public, trying to get them to feel sorry for them, trying to get them to believe lies and believe that they're a good person, they have good fruit, when they oftentimes don't. And so if you believe everything at face value, instead of going deeper and discerning what the Lord is showing you, then you may be duped into giving them money. And you may be contributing, you may be supporting people that need healed and delivered. They need, you know, and in many cases, there's consequences that they have for their actions that they've taken, and they've never, ever apologized to the people that they've truly hurt. They've never repented to God, and they want people to feel sorry for them and to help bail them out. And unfortunately, you know, it's hard to discern. You know, you want to believe that everybody that says something is the truth, but in reality, what I've learned in ministry is many times it's not. You know, and later I've had some people come up to me and said, "I'm sorry, you know, I didn't say all the truth to you, and I didn't want to, because I knew if I did, it would make me look bad." And I'm like, well, but as they got more healed and more delivered, they were able to share it. They're like, yeah, I did some really bad things, you know, to my spouse or to my children. And they could admit it later because they were more healed. So again, pursue healing and deliverance. Pursue forgiving people for hurting you. Ask Jesus to come speak to you about the people that hurt you. your father, your mother, and oftentimes, I'll see this all the time, where they get hurt growing up, either sexually, fathers, mothers, stepfathers, stepmothers, and then if they're not healed, they'll get into a relationship, get married, and then they'll take out all of their pain on those people that they get married to. And then they drive the person away, because the person's like, wait a minute, why are you attacking me? I'm not your dad. I'm not your mom. And I'm not the bad guy. But they're convinced, because their demons are telling them that, they're just like your dad. They're just like your mom. They're just like the person that sexually touched you. So be mad at them and get angry at them. And then they end up self-sabotaging their own relationships. But they don't want to admit that to the public. They'd rather paint themselves as a victim. Stay in the victim mode, have the sympathy factor, and please feel sorry. Always feel sorry for me. Woe is me. And by the way, can you give me money? Because that's what they'll do. So as you become healed and more delivered, then you will no longer have to paint the false narrative. You will not have to come up with, okay, how am I going to sell this to my friends to make it look like I am not the one that caused this bad thing to happen or broke this relationship. I've got to come up with a false narrative. And oh yeah, this is a good one. The demons oftentimes will speak to them. They'll try and float it out there. And then if people buy it, they're like, oh great. But then the problem is they keep their demons. They don't get delivered. Go on to another relationship. They end up having bad things happen, and they want to act like I'm just a sweet little innocent thing. And then they move on down the road to the next person and the next person. So we do need to look in the mirror at ourselves, and there should be good fruit. If there's not good fruit, then be honest and say, Lord, humble yourself before the Lord and say, Lord, show me. Let me deal with my stuff. What do I need to get healed from? And it always goes back to when they were growing up. They need to get healed. They need to forgive. And then they'll have the good fruit. I can remember, again, I didn't, growing up, I didn't have, a lot of wounds and pains. I had pains being exposed to pornography, and talk about that. But my mom and my dad treated me very well. My pain came in when I got married, and I also had some pain in other relationships at that point, but I was able to handle them better because I was older. And then I got delivered myself in 2008, and at that point everything changed in my life. I was more patient and kind and loving, and the fruit of the Spirit developed. And so understanding that if you get hurt when you were little, you are a victim at that point. But we need to, when you're healed and you know that you're healed, when you no longer have to talk a lot about it, it doesn't affect you anymore. You can remember it without triggering, without any pain associated with it, without any tears, without any anger, And you can love a person, like you can be in a marriage with somebody and you really love that person, but that person tormented you horribly and had demonic spirits, and then they went through a divorce and they want to accuse you and not take responsibility for what they've done, and it can grieve you. Jesus was sad and grieved. He had compassion for those who killed him. He's like, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. And so we can have compassion for those who hurt us and abuse us, but we don't have to come up with a false narrative when you're healed and delivered. You can be honest and say, yep, I messed up here. Yep, I did this wrong. I can own it. You can own your stuff. You can go to your spouse and say, I'm sorry for what I've done. Will you please forgive me? If you trigger and go off. It's interesting going through sessions with people all over the world when people are telling me that, my spouse bought the book, whatever, Restored to Freedom, Freedom from Soul Wounds and Demons. I was going through the characteristic list, and oftentimes people will say, well, I could only see a third of those characteristics of Jezebel in me, but my spouse could see 2/3 or 3/4. So as they've gone through more healing and deliverance, then they can see more because those scales are removed from their eyes. And at that point, they're like, yeah, I had a lot of those. In fact, I had almost all. And then it no longer affects them anymore. They can be honest. But oftentimes Leviathan and Jezebel will put blinders on your eyes, and you don't see how you behave. You don't see how you come across, And you change when you're healed and delivered. You're more patient. You've got the fruit of the Spirit, really. The love, the joy, the peace, the patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Hello to Victor Miranda from Florida, no longer living in Indiana. seeing beautiful sunrises with lots of water instead of cornfields and manure on the fields and trees and so forth. So, alrighty. So again, understanding when you are driving towards being healed and delivered from your wounds, your behavior changes, and then you have more fruit of the Spirit. You don't have to come up with a false narrative because you're not doing those things that you did in the past. So yeah, it does sound familiar. And I love being in this area. This is near where I live currently in Atlanta, and it's very peaceful. Got a lot of trees, very foresty, the birds chirping and so forth. Right now it feels wonderful. You know, I've been traveling a lot, and it's been good to take a couple of days off. Got my taxes done yesterday morning, my personal taxes. And it's good to take a couple of days off and to rest. You know, when you're living in hotels, living with other people and traveling, and you have to be flexible, and then you're doing personal sessions, you know, it does take a lot out of people when you're giving and giving. But I love doing this. You know, a person I did a session with actually today said, I can tell that you really love doing what you're doing. And I'm like, I do. I love it because I have gone through the healing and deliverance. I don't have to come up with a false narrative anymore. And it's a wonderful feeling. You know, the childlike innocence gets restored. You have a wonderful life at that point. In fact, I've got a shirt on. Can you see it? Life is good. Of course, it looks the way that it should when I'm on YouTube, but I didn't have it switched on Facebook. But life is good. This is when I went to Estes Park, Colorado last summer with my wife. We drove there. It's a neat town. It's close to a national park, and pretty. In fact, they had the lake there, Lake Lily. Remember that? Got a picture with Lily there. But it's a wonderful life when you're healed and you're delivered. You don't have to be angry and mad. You don't have to blame other things on other things that are not true. You can just be honest, enjoy life, and have a lot of peace. And then you can have peace with your spouse. And again, I want everyone to get healed and delivered. And then, if you're not married, I want you to, and I believe the Lord wants to give you your desires of your heart, if you want to be married, to a person that's going to love you and have compassion for you and have peace and wake up in the mornings and drink coffee if you're coffee drinkers, but to have peace all the time, to have encouragement, to be on the same team. It's wonderful life. I just heard a squirrel, I think, and I see a bird flying over. Alrighty, gonna let you guys go. It's just too much peace here in this woods. So we thank you, Father. I just pray for everybody, Lord, that are watching, Lord, that they will feel your peace come upon them right now, Lord, that they will not strive, fight, argue over anything, and that they will not have to have a false narrative, that they will be able to speak the truth. Truth is what sets us free, and we are free indeed. There's another big bird. We are free indeed when we are healed and delivered. You know, you think about that. There's lots of people all across, all of our family members and so forth, that are in various stages of being healed or delivered. Some of them not at all, that are just toxic to be around, you know, and it's not healthy, and you have to stay away from them, and that's sad. But if more and more pastors would talk about this message of being healed and delivered, we'd have more and more people that are true churchgoers that would be healed and delivered, and would have the fruit of the Spirit, would be like Christ. They wouldn't have to come up with a false narrative. They wouldn't have to be gossiping and lying and twisting the truth. You know, you see that a lot. People that are not healed and delivered, they do these things that are not good, they do things that are bad, and then they lie about it. And then they get mad at those who are godly, and they accuse them oftentimes of what they're doing. And then they try to lie about them to turn other people away from them. So, all right, I will let you go. I'm gonna get a haircut, I think, today. And so I'll come back tomorrow without having a lot of this hair. Alrighty, see you guys later. Love ya. Bye-bye.